Good morning and happy Saturday. It is October the 9th at 8:30 a.m. Central. And this is Rogue, your local Okie Red Dirt Shaman. And this is episode 3 of the Red Dirt Gospels. And today I'm going to be talking to you guys about the concept of punishment. Now, keep in mind, these are gospels that I'm bringing you. So these are the good word, the inspired word that is meant to give you some relief, guidance, enlightenment, clarity. It's not nothing that we talk about is meant to bring guilt, shame, feelings of inadequacy. This is the good freaking word. So we're gonna break this down, and I'm gonna give you my opinions on this and tell you some stories about how I've dealt with these concepts. And to that end, I do want to preface this by saying pretty much everything I talk about is from a personal lens of experience. In the magic community, what I talk about would be considered UPG, or unverified personal gnosis. I am fine with that. I don't need my gnosis to match anybody else's. I know what I know because of the relationships that I've cultivated with the energies that I work with. I encourage you, not just that I am okay with it, but I encourage you to do your own research and to form your own opinions. More than anything, make sure you're always checking with your intuition. I may be on a separate but parallel healing journey, and what works for you may not, or what works for me may not work for you, but the information that I'm providing may be keys, clues, or tips into insights into understanding your own journey. Take what resonates, leave the rest, and let's get into it. So, I remember first becoming somewhat disillusioned. I was raised in the church. I was raised, my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, raised us in a Pentecostal. It was non-denominational, but it was Pentecostal leaning Christian church. I enjoyed it. It's part of the sermons and things that I learned. I never connected with God. I never really connected with Jesus. My granny was always sort of, I kind of like looked to her faith as being a measurement of the validity of the existence of God or deity, but I did not personally feel them myself. But as I grew through the church, of course, your levels of understanding and awareness do change. Your levels of knowledge and ability to comprehend concepts starts to change and morph. I was baptized in that church when I was 8 years old. So like I was Christian for a long time. Like I did consider myself to be a Christian. So nothing I talk about is anti-Christian. I still know lots of Christians. I know Christian witches. I really don't have a problem inherently with the Christian faith as far as if it was being practiced, when it's practiced. There are churches that do practice the teachings of Christ, which is love and unity and rejecting institutions of oppression. What I have a problem with is people who exist as spiritual leaders and instill depersonalization and fear tactics to actually subconsciously tune you to worshiping them and worshiping the church itself, instead of fostering a one-to-one connection through your own personal introspective work to the gods by yourself. So if you don't know, if this is your first time hearing me speak, if you're not familiar with my Facebook page, I do identify as Norse pagan or heathen. I just like calling myself a heathen, and I am a priest in the name of Odin. I have dedicated my practice to teaching in alignment with Odin's teachings. So that's a pretty far removal from, the Christian church I was raised in. And a lot of that came from the not so much the church that I was raised in. There were times later where I questioned that, and I questioned it to a degree that I completely removed myself from it. But where I started to have sort of the fracture, or where I became more disillusioned with Christianity, was where my stepdad's mother took us to a Lutheran church. Now, if you don't know what Lutheran is, it's very similar to Catholicism, in that it's very ritual based, very hymns, stand up, sit down, stand up, sit down. They're very more strict. They are not obviously. If you know anything about theology, Martin Luther did remove himself from the Catholic Church, and that's where we get Protestant religions from. So, and Protestant literally means to protest. But he didn't really protest that much. You know what I mean? He didn't really protest that much. And we can do some research on that together later if you guys are interested in the breakdown of the differences. But what you need to know for this conversation is simply that Lutheranism, from what I experienced, is very fear, obedience, do as I say, not as I do, that type of blind subjugation. And I mean, flat out, just, it's oppressive. Like, to me, the way I experienced it at this particular establishment was very oppressive. And the thing that started sort of breaking the veil for me, or breaking that fourth wall of just being a Christian and falling in line with that doctrine, was at this Lutheran church, at the Pentecostal church. Let me back up. At the Pentecostal church where I was baptized, they taught a lot about the love of Christ, and that's what I liked about it. It was a Jesus was more of, I mean, honestly, he was more kind of like a buddy Christ figure, but like, we didn't really, from what I was around, we didn't really talk about like the wrath of God and all that shit. But he was like firm but fair, like cool dad Jesus, and like I can get down on that, because like, who doesn't like, a cool parent that like is like, oh, I don't want you drinking outside the house, so you can drink here, but if I catch you, you're gonna be grounded. Like, kind of like that is kind of how Jesus was in my granny's church. That's how I remember it. If my granny's listening to this and I'm wrong, I'm not trying to be insulting, I'm just saying that's how I remember it. Then, so we get told, like, okay, like, Jesus loves you no matter what, right? Jesus is, like, down for you. He's, like, he, like, died for you, and he's always gonna be there for you, and, like, you don't have to worry about shit because Jesus did it for you, and Jesus is totally rad, right? Well, then we start going to this Lutheran church, and the Lutheran church is, like the Sunday school teachers and stuff, because I was still young, I was very young at these times, like, they start teaching us about how, you should be scared of God, and just because Jesus died for our sins doesn't mean that we're absolved of sin, and that we need to be scared. We need to live in a way that is pious and constantly be reminding ourselves about what big pieces of shit we are. That's really all I got from, I mean, I could go on, but that's where I started to see that breakdown of communication, and I started asking questions. I was always like a little shifty shit. I still am one, but I started asking questions because I was like, it felt like I had come onto something in my own way that was like spicy knowledge, like I wasn't supposed to know. Because, like, let me be clear, like, I have always had like a very deep fear of, like, the devil. Like, they put that fear in me when I was a young child, and like now I know, because I'm autistic, now I know that, like, I just took that shit so literal that there was nothing that my grandmother's church, my maternal granny's church did wrong. That's what they teach, is, heaven and hell and all that. But by teaching me about Satan and how God's always watching you like a fucking, like, less fun Santa Claus, it literally scared me to fucking death. So, like, I didn't want to do nothing that was, like, going to piss off Sky Daddy. I didn't want to I didn't want to go to hell. Like, there was like a lot. I had to, even like coming into my pagan faith, like I'm literally a priest for Odin. I literally like speak on Odin, and I'm pagan as fuck, but I still sometimes catch myself being like, oh God, I hope I didn't say something that's gonna make me go to hell. That's how deep that runs for me. And I have to constantly coach and remind myself, like, you're safe, you're not part of that, narrative anymore. It's up to you to decide how you want to experience this, those types of things. But that's kind of what I wanted to talk to you guys today about, is like, we're taught, from a young age to be scared of everything, but we're not given really any structure on how to express that, like whether it's church or being scared to go to the principal's office or getting a referral on the bus. We are taught. I don't know how. I mean, I grew up in Oklahoma. I grew up in a Oklahoma's not really the South. I wouldn't really call us the South, but we're definitely Southern leaning on our on the experience that you have in Oklahoma, and the kind of like the line of morality, which is very Bible Belt. Listen to your parents, obey your parents, the man is in charge, those types of things. Even though the women in my family have been breadwinners for several generations, it's always the man is in charge, like all that, which I don't have no problems with men either, but you know what I'm saying, like those kinds of values. So that shit was instilled in me from a very young age. Be afraid. Be afraid. Well, that fear doesn't have anywhere to go. It's just anxiety. So to alleviate some of the anxiety, and I know that this happens with a lot of people, probably everyone, we start to punish ourselves. Like we're told there's this box, right? And we're supposed to fit in this box. And if you don't fit in this box, or if some of your parts are hanging over the box, you're supposed to cut those parts off so that you don't inconvenience anyone else. And that's what these narratives were teaching me from a young age. So I go from one weekend of having my head filled with this information about how Jesus is awesome and cool, and we should dedicate our lives to Jesus and wash ourselves in the blood of the Lamb and all this other kind of like very witchy ritual shit, to Jesus fucking hates you and nothing you can do is ever gonna make him happy, so just hate yourself enough and maybe St. Peter will have mercy on you and let you into the gates of heaven after you confess all your sins. Like, it was very stark and very confusing. So I started asking all these like little sneaky questions, like especially to other people in my Sunday school groups and stuff, like, well, is this Christianity and is this also Christianity? And like, of course, because I was asking those questions outside of, like, I wasn't explaining it to anyone, so nobody knew why I was asking those questions. So of course I would be like, yeah, it's just how it is to be a Christian. So then I start forming these thoughts for myself of like, well, shit, if it's all the same Jesus, this doesn't make any fucking sense to me. And it started pulling me away from, like, the narrative was like real shaky, right? So I decided for myself, when I was feeling this call to become a minister and become a priest and actually have this faith and speak on the faith that I have and the gods that I pray to, I told myself a long ass time ago, I would never ever preach a doctrine of fear and control and power. I would never, never is a long time, right? But I would do my best to always look at these lessons through a lens of love and acceptance. And in order to do that, in order for you guys to hear the message that I'm teaching you, or that I'm trying to convey, not teaching, but that I'm trying to convey that's important to me, I gotta first tell you guys how to recognize this stuff so that you can start filtering it out. Just like as soon as I tell myself, oh, the devil's gonna get you, and I have to start having that communication with myself to be like, no, the devil's not gonna get me. you guys got to start having those conversations with yourself too. And why is that? Because if you are constantly punishing yourself and constantly moving your own goalposts, you are never going to be able to accept, receive, or manifest your abundance. It is just never going to happen. Those two things cannot live in the same fucking space. And I'm here to tell you guys right now, we're not living in that shitty energy anymore. We are moving out of survival, and we are going to comfortably settle into thrivity, to thriving. Like we are not going to shiver in fear of an unknown deity anymore, or an unknown energy anymore, in service of keeping ourselves small. But in order to do that, in order to move out of that, y'all got to know how to look for these things. So let's start simply with that Christian narrative. A lot of people that I know, they're either kind of like in limbo, or they are still Christian. You can still be a Christian, but why be attached to that narrative of like, you know, that the devil's gonna get you? If you were created in God's image and God made you to experience life, why would he punish you for all of eternity? You know what I mean? Why would he do that? Moreover, if God is this energy that you're supposed to find within yourself, wouldn't it make more sense that you would treat yourself how you wanted God to treat you? And in that case, the forgiveness that you have to have, the forgiveness that you're going to have to find, is going to have to start by forgiving yourself. So that's where we need to get to. That's where we need to go. So if God is within, and we want God to treat us, any God, anyone you pray to. I pray to Odin. I had to forgive myself in order to be able to hear Odin, in order to be able to work with Odin. I had to tell myself that I was worthy. And the forgiveness isn't just, I forgive you. You're going to have to figure out, what is that deep thing that you're punishing yourself for? Like, my thing was, is I just really did believe. And then, you know, I had not the best parents, not the best adult figures in the you know, like the majority of my daily life, the people that I was around most, and they would tell me constantly what a piece of shit I was, and reinforcing that. So I'm hearing it all through the week. I'm hearing it from teachers, and then I'm also hearing it you know, at church every other weekend, these, you know, the Lutheran church. So it was just constantly reinforced for me. So I had to do a lot in order to speak to a deity, in order to hear those messages from a deity. You have to have a lot of like confidence and self-worth and value in yourself, because they're not going to be able to, just the vibration of that exists at a level where they're not going to be able to reach you if you are just constantly telling yourself and projecting out that you're a piece of shit. So in order for you to move out of that energy, we got to start by finding that core that tells you that you're not worthy of these experiences. And in order to do that, we're going to have to get a little messy, a little personal, a little messy. And these are things you can do by yourself. You don't have to discuss them with other people, because oftentimes the things that we hold as having the most amount of shame are the hardest things to talk about. And it doesn't even mean that they're anything that's actually bad, but we've been encapsulating this little thing in layers of masking, compensation, coping, not great coping skills for such a long time, that this little thing has gone from being, perhaps you said fuck one time, and you know, you felt bad for saying fuck to your mom, or telling your mom to shut up, or one of those things, but that has become a fear narrative, that every time something else bad happens and you are punished, you are also re-punishing yourself for that original thing that you did, that brought you to understand that you were not worthy anymore. So this is what I'm here to say to you guys. This is the gospel, right? This is the red dirt gospel. So I'm here to tell you the good word. The good word. No one is keeping score. No one but you is keeping score. There is no one else on the planet who is looking at you. And if they are, they're not part of this journey anymore. They can't be part of this journey in order for you to receive your abundance and your blessings and your miracles. You're letting yourself be living in this bland, milk toast, boring, very logical, very like I'm taking my own punishments by keeping things from myself life, by rejecting, those miracles that can only come to you on that vibration of abundance, which only happens, you can only step into that flow when you are actively allowing yourself to be treated as the divine being that you are. I worked as here's some little insight. Like I said, if you don't know me, these are things you'll find out for the first time today. But I was a dominatrix for probably about 8 months, less than a year, but approaching a year. I was a dominatrix, and I did a lot of work with a lot of people. I thought that business was going to be a certain way. You see that portrayed as whips and chains and all this stuff. And let me tell you what, the majority of what I did had very little to do with tools. And I never did anything, it was all psychological. There was never any touching. But a lot of what I did had to do much less with whips or even verbiage. And it was more just allowing people to have a safe space to work out their punishment narrative. Whether it was that they were embarrassed about their kink, or they were upset about some infraction that they had made, and that had become a fetish for them. The narrative revolved around having a safe place to self-deprecate and punish. But that was empowering. There was a lot of power in that, because these people were able to come to me, and I was able to receive that trauma. And that's part of what made me believe it or not, that's part of what made me feel like, yes, I'm ready to become a minister. Yes, I'm ready to step into this role as a priest, because I've already done it. I just did it in a different costume. But that's really what people would bring to me, was they would just bring to me their problems, and that role play that happened where I was telling them that they had done this thing wrong or that thing wrong. That was their way of working out that issue that had become a core part of their personality. That was their way of re-inviting that energy in so that they could analyze it and let it go. So what I'm saying is this is a very common thing that everyone deals with. So if you're sitting on this narrative of, I can never become this, I can never do that, because you're convinced that you've done something so wrong that you will never be forgiven for it, well, how can you expect anyone else to forgive you if you don't do it to yourself first? If you don't tell yourself, you're that part of you first, you're enough, you deserve happiness, you deserve kindness. That's where we gotta start opening that area up for you. We gotta open the mosh pit up a little bit for you to be able to get in there and start thrashing around in a healthy way, right? These punishments only serve, the thing that became, one of the things that was very appealing to me about the Norse faith. I was called to the Norse faith. I did not choose it. Let me just start there. But after I started reading about it, because I vehemently rejected Odin at first, I was like, no, I will not work with you, just because of the connotations. I was trying to be Celt. I did not want that. That was not my perfect idea of being a pagan. I was going to be a fucking green witch, and I was going to work with Ogham and all this kind of stuff because my father's family is Irish. No, that's not what was in the cards for me, which is fine, because I very much am happy where I am now, and the deities that I have were chosen for me for the right reasons. I mean, Odin is all about the pursuit of knowledge, and I am nothing if not constantly thirsty for new information, new data, new ways to create new neural pathways and learn and explore and face my fears. And that's another thing that Odin is really good at, is helping me face my fears. So I would invite anyone who, maybe not Odin because he's a little rough, but I would invite anyone who's struggling with facing that punishment cycle, to call on your deities. It doesn't have to be Odin. You don't have to pray to the same gods that I do. And that's another thing I want to say to you guys, is like, none of this is meant to be monopantheonistic. In other words, you do not have to be Norse to take what I'm saying and apply it to your own life. I exist as a Norse person because that is the narrative that makes sense to me, but these are truths that ring through any narrative, regardless of what your faith basis is. You don't even have to have a deity to apply these things to your life. The main goal here is, let's get you out of this mindset that you owe, that you are in debt. Let's put it this way. Your soul is not in debt because you exist. This is your first time being this person. This person has never existed. Even if you believe in past lives, reincarnations, this version of you, this inception of you, has never existed before. And yeah, you probably remember some things, and you probably thought in the moment, man, I could probably do this differently, but I want to try it this way. But that doesn't mean that you are in debt spiritually for the rest of your life to some unknown deity that you have to make this massive like measure of attrition for. That's not real love. You know what I mean? Like, if these deities really love us like they say they do, that's not real love. I can't tell you how many times I've told Odin to eat a dick. Like, literally, I've just been like, I'm not dealing with this today. And he'll literally be like, okay, you're in a spicy mood. I'll come back later, or I'll send Loki. You know what I mean? Like, Odin's never been like, fuck you, you're going to Nidhogg. He's going to devour your soul for all of eternity, and nobody likes you anymore, eat shit. Like, he's never ever done that for me having a bad day or doing something wrong. And like, there's plenty of stuff in my life that I'm not particularly proud of or happy about that's in my narrative, but all of those things brought me to where I am today. And the forgiveness that I have for myself is less about forgiving my transgressions. It's less about those individual actions that happened, and it's more about the forgiveness to be able to make those mistakes. That's what I've had to do. That's what's made the most sense to me, is not so much forgiving that I fucked up, but giving myself enough space to allow the fuck ups, to understand and expect that those mistakes are going to be part of the story. And being brave, like being confident and brave enough to take a step that may result in a mistake. A concept that came up for me recently, which is what led to me wanting to make this video for this week's episode, is that I was keeping myself very, very tiny because I was able to have this illusion of control wherein I could choose what my punishment was. And this was something that started when I was a child. My parents would take anything from me that made me happy. They couldn't. I was just like, they weren't always bad parents. I don't want to create this like false narrative where they were just like always terrible. Maybe they weren't bad parents, but they weren't the best parents for me. They weren't the best parents for an autistic child that went undiagnosed until she was 30 years old. Very sensitive to everything, but didn't know how. I'm a very passionate, I have a very deep well of emotion, but I rarely know how to express it. I rarely know how to have that come up without it becoming explosive, or without completely turning it off, because it scares me. I have a lot of like sensory issues, and even my own emotions trigger those sensory issues because I'm afraid of them. Like, I'm afraid of not afraid of the emotions, but I'm afraid of the loudness, the pain of how intense those emotions are. So I've had to learn how to express those differently. I do that a lot through writing, so I'm not speaking, and I'm doing it a lot through my artwork and stuff like that, which works very well for me, but is more difficult to explain to a parent who just doesn't have like the best communication skills, you know. But to that end, they would basically, I had an attitude. I've always thought that I was smarter than everyone else on the planet. I still think that. and I don't care who is mad about it. I leave myself open to being proven wrong, but it's very rare that I'm proven wrong, and I've been like that since I was a child. So of course I had an attitude. Of course I talk back. Of course I didn't want to just be told to do things without any logical reason why, or if I was enjoying myself or if I wasn't bothering anyone and my stepdad would come in and tell me that I needed to be doing something or to go outside, of course I'm going to fire back with why. Like, who am I bothering? What am I doing wrong that you're so bothered by, my peace? Why does my peace interrupt literally anything you're doing? So I think my parents kind of learned early on that, like, I wasn't going to respond. Corporal punishment never really did anything for me. I don't really care about, yeah, you can spank me, hit me, or whatever as a child, but if the logic is flawed, I'm going to continue to do it. It's just the way I'm wired, So to get me to comply, they would take things away from me, or they would make me feel bad about things that I enjoyed. Specifically, my stepdad would do those things. So I learned early on to hide what I liked, to hide it, to not show my happiness, not show my joy. If we went somewhere, I was very careful about expressing that I was having a good time, because then that became a tool of punishment. Oh, you're having a good time? Well, if you ever want to do this again, you better make sure all those dishes are done, that type of thing. And the punishments were never, they were never weighted fairly against any, perceived transgressions. So as an adult, what I'm saying is as an adult, I had to learn how to have fun again. I had to learn how to allow myself to enjoy things, because I'd hidden them. It wasn't that I didn't know how. It was that was a learned coping skill, that I had started to internally punish myself for enjoying things. And I would catch myself as an adult, free, out of the house I grew up in. I'm 35 now. I would catch myself saying, well, you don't deserve that, you don't need that, even though that's broke. If something would break, and I'd be like, well, you broke it, so you deserve to deal with it now. Broken, do your best, it's not that broken, blah blah blah. And these were all things that I had heard as a kid, and was self-perpetuating. There was no reason for me to self-perpetuate that shit. It had just become part of my core programming. So I have been recently working through that, and I want to invite everyone else to work through that as well, because it's been doing a lot. I've unraveled a lot of other knots by working on the self-punishment issues that I have. And by that, what I mean is I have been able to open myself up to taking more chances and exploring more concepts and ideas without needing to control the outcome or needing to know all the possibilities before I'll even decide to do it. I was really, I was telling the universe that I needed a miracle. I honestly, who doesn't? I'm not saying that I'm any different than anybody else, but like, I really need like a financial miracle. Like, I need like a lottery. I don't play the lottery, but like, I need like a lottery situation to come through or something to like alleviate some of this like paycheck to paycheck stress. I know everyone's broke, but like, I'm doing magic for myself out here. I encourage y'all to do it for yourself too. Abundance is abundance. There's plenty of it to go around. Nobody's taking it out of anybody else's mouth. Do it for yourself too. But I'm sitting out here telling the universe, like, I'm in danger, I need help, please help me. And like, they've been trying, but like every opportunity that's come up, I've turned it down, because I've been like, well, I just don't know if I can do that. I just don't know. Because of that narrative of like, I don't want to take any risks, because A, I might enjoy it, and then B, if I enjoy it, something bad is going to happen. But something bad is happening already by not allowing myself to have these experiences. The human experience is what we have. It's literally your individual expression, your viewpoint, your perspective. That is so important. Everything that you do, you are the only one who will be able to write that story. And that's that's very much in line with the Norse narrative and the Norse mythology. To me personally, I don't believe that Valhalla is an actual place per se, as much as it is the immortality of having sagas written about you, having living a life in such a way that your name is remembered through generations. And the only way to do that, you're not gonna, I'm not gonna get my name written on these golden halls of Valhalla, where the brave may live forever, if I'm constantly afraid of taking a step outside. Caution is one thing, being prepared is one thing, being afraid of mystic punishment for your happiness and your pleasure of being a human being, that's a totally different monster. And that's the one that we want to start addressing, and address it nicely. The monster is part of you. The monster, we're not getting rid of the monster. It lives in you now. You can't get rid of it. But you can start feeding it candy. You know what I mean? You can start taking it to the park. You can give it a name, and you can buy it a stuffed animal so that, it knows it's safe. All these things we kind of collect, we can't get rid of them. We can't push them away because they're part of us now. But we can put them to work in other ways. And that little punishment monster, the little gremlin that lives in my head now, when it starts coming up and telling me that I can't do something, I give it permission to see how well we can do something. Instead of punishing me, I give it permission to try new things and see how well the outcome may be. This is one of those things. This series is one of those things. Because that punishment monster kept telling me, well, no one wants to listen to you. Well, who cares if no one wants to listen to me? I like to talk. And here we are talking, right? And maybe this will be a thing that's that helps a lot of people, or maybe it's just something that'll help me. But either way, I'm having a good time, and that's what's important. And that's what I want you guys to take from this is nothing that you do with a glad heart is wrong. Nothing that you do that does not harm other people. Obviously, you don't want to be out there. There are still mortal consequences, right? You can still go to prison for murder and all of that. But nothing that you do with a glad heart, with intentions of happiness in your heart, is wrong. Nothing that you do that brings you joy, ecstatic trance, doesn't come from being pushed into a fear-based narrative. It doesn't, fear isn't what's going to drive the wheels and push those cogs forward. It's love that's going to do that. It's prosperity that's going to do that. It's abundance. But that all starts with freeing yourself from that punishment that you're doling out to yourself every single fucking time you try and take a step. So I'm going to end it there. Let me know if you have any other questions or need anything else on this topic. If you get anything from this and you feel so compelled, here's the PayPal, paypal.me/Rogue Tradition. And here's the Venmo at Rogue Tradition. Anything that you feel you might want to donate, I appreciate. These are services that I do as freely as possible, but anything that puts a little bit of room between me and worrying about keeping the lights on means I get to do more of these with a glad heart, and I don't have to spend so much time grinding. Thank you for coming. Thank you for being a part of it, and thank you for giving me an audience for which I can express my unique voice, and I look forward to seeing more of you guys expressing yours as well. Have a great day, and I'll see you soon.